All right, it is time to talk about the Battlemage Remastered. So I made a top 5 Oblivion build video. A lot of you watched it. It's been awesome. But that was based on vanilla Oblivion. I want to talk about changes and include a little key here about if you're doing master difficulty, some different choices you should make. So one, your race for a Battlemage should either be a Breton or a High Elf. If you're doing master difficulty, you're going to want to pick Breton for that 50% magic resist. They have 50% magic resist and plus 50 magicka. High Elves have weaknesses, but they have 100%, 100 bonus to magicka. So that big bonus to magicka is nice. And if you're playing on just adept, normal difficulty, you don't really need more defenses. I've found that enemies do very, very little damage, and you can deal with that late game with enchants. So early game, enemies aren't really a threat if you're on normal difficulty, so you might as well get that extra 50 magicka from being a High Elf. The Birth Sign, kind of the same idea. Normal difficulty, you pick Mage. So if you pick the High Elf Mage, that's 150 bonus magicka. At level 1, walking out of the sewers, you're going to have 250 magicka. If you pick Breton Mage, that would be 200. If you pick Breton Lord, you'll only have 150. However, that is enough to do what you need to do. 150 magicka is not bad at level 1. And the Lord now provides 15% shield, so 15% armor, and 15% magic resist. So a Breton will have 65% magic resist out of the gate. They won't need to get to level 22 to get that mundane ring to get all the way up to 100 magic resist. Now, obviously, they could do that for their endgame build, but in master difficulty, it's going to be a lot more difficult to get there without either grinding or being cheesy, and so the Lord's going to help that happen. For specialization, now again, magic is still always a great choice, but with the new changes to the way magic skills level up, with the experience that you gain is now based on the base cost of the spell. So if you're casting spells with very high magicka costs, which you will be with any of these builds, you're going to be gaining experience in your destruction and restoration very quickly. In fact, with restoration, you can always add fortify magicka spells, which will be expensive, but they will give you more magicka, allowing you to cast even more spells and gain more magic experience, and that'll kind of compound on itself. It can get out of control pretty quickly. So I think picking combat could be a good idea to give you +5 to heavy armor and +5 to block, which will allow you to stay alive longer, and it will make those go up faster. So if you're doing master difficulty, I think combat would be my way to go for this battle mage. Your attributes. Well, master difficulty, you need health, so it's strength and endurance. If you're not doing master difficulty, I would pick luck because that's going to give you +2 to blunt. It's going to give you +2 to heavy armor, +2 to destruction, things that you really value and can do a lot of damage. And your other ones don't really matter on normal difficulty. I would just say luck for sure on normal. So something you always want to pick no matter your difficulty, just your major skills: destruction, restoration, heavy armor, blunt, and alchemy. I think this is the bread and butter of what the build is. In vanilla Oblivion, you wouldn't pick alchemy because it could gain you levels too quickly. And that's no longer a problem in the remaster. You want to pick major skills now that are going to augment your build. Only pick skills that you're going to use, and how fast they level isn't really a factor anymore. So that's just a total difference. Also, blunt instead of blade now. Blunt at level 50, when you do a power attack, gives you plus 15% shield for 5 seconds. And at level 100 blunt, gives you plus 30% shield for 10 seconds. So you can use that to augment your build, especially before you've reached that armor cap. I think at 50 blunt, that's going to make a big difference. So you can kind of start a fight with a power attack from your blunt weapon and then cast all your magicka to finish off your opponents. So that'll be part of the Battle Mage. We'll actually be using power attacks a lot more, which I think is nice. It'll add some different gameplay. Now in normal difficulty, the last two don't really matter. You know, you could pick whatever you like, whether you want alteration for more feather or more shield casting. You could pick armorer so you can instantly repair your magic enchanted gear. You could pick block or conjuration. It doesn't matter. You could pick any other magic school as well if you wanted illusion, if you want sneak. It's your preference on normal difficulty. I would say these green ones are the bread and butter. The last two don't matter. On master difficulty, however, I think conjuration and block are almost required because summons in master difficulty aren't affected by the difficulty. All master difficulty does is you deal ×5 damage. You deal divided by 5 damage and you take ×5 damage. Your summons aren't affected by that though. Neither are poisons, and alchemy will help with that as well. So poisons are crazy good and summons are crazy good. Block is just necessary because we got to stay alive, and the combat is going to add 5 to that. So we're going to start with 30 block and 30 heavy armor because they're major skills and we picked combat. We're also going to start with a lot of defenses. I'll get into the specifics of that in a little bit. What you're going to train, well, it doesn't really matter. Whatever's taking a long time to level. If destruction and restoration are leveling really fast, I wouldn't worry about it. Level something else. Maybe just move to heavy armor. But you want to get all of these to 100. You can play around with that. If something's leveling slow, level that up. In master difficulty, well, you want to get heavy armor up to 50 as soon as possible. And that's because at level 50, your spell effectiveness gets to 95%, which is the cap for a mage while wearing armor. So 50 is really important. And then you're going to want to get destruction up to 50 really quickly too, because that's when you can get weakness to magic, which is pretty much necessary to kill things on master difficulty. Attributes, well, you're starting with endurance and strength, and you're going all out endurance and strength in master difficulty to get that health. And then intelligence, speed, willpower, in that order, I would say. In normal difficulty, well, strength is great for carry weight, but you can just start pumping intelligence. I think endurance goes way down in value. Once those are all maxed out, you can do speed, willpower, and then speed. Agility and personality simply don't matter. I would not put points into luck. You could choose the +5 points, but I wouldn't be using my level ups on luck. Burst Stone, if you don't know what these are, I have a whole video on it. You should watch it. It's fun. Atronach is very defensive and pretty good. Mage is just 50 extra magicka. And the Serpent gives you a Paralyze, which can be pretty nice for master difficulty to keep you alive. Now, I want to talk about how you would stay alive for a little bit. If you're doing master difficulty, so if we're looking at a level 1 Breton out of the gate, you have 70 health. And that's if you pick strength and endurance as your favorite attributes. Your armor, if you're wearing a full set of iron armor and you have 30 armor skill because you chose it as a major skill and a combat specialization, it'll probably be a little bit higher than this, but we'll just say 30 because that's what it starts at level 1 before any enemy has attacked you. That will give you 21.8 armor. The Lord Sign gives you another 15. This means you're taking 36.8% less damage. Block skill starts out at 30 as well. You want to get that up. So at level 1, right out of the sewers, with 70 health, your effective health is 110. With blocking, it's 158. So this 32 is saying on master difficulty, if you block every physical attack, you have 32 effective health. Meaning if enemies on normal difficulty do 8 damage, you will die in 4 hits with blocking. Now, luckily, most enemies at level 1 aren't doing 8 damage, so you'll notice you'll actually stay alive. The rats in the sewers are doing 1 or 2. The goblins might be doing 3. So 32 will actually feel like a decent amount of health. As long as you're blocking everything, you should be okay. Now, with that in mind, it's not like healing is going to heal you that large percent. It's going to be healing you 6 out of this 70. So your heal will still not be that great. But as you get this heavy armor skill up, that number is going to go up. As you get your block up, it's going to go up. Obviously, and those will go up pretty quickly because they're major skills and your combat specialization now. Each level up, if you're putting 5 into strength and endurance, you'll also be getting pretty big health boosts. So even by level 3, you can get that up pretty quickly. And as you upgrade your armor, if you get into, I think the base armor of Orcish is 55. Well, Orcish should be pretty high. But even Steel, we could have 45. Your health and armor is going to go up. You can keep getting that skill up. It'll go up very quickly. And that will make your defenses and your effective health much higher. Late game effective health, well, if you have 400 health and you're at the armor cap and you have max block skill, and by max block skill, so blocking with the shield reduces damage by 1% per block skill. If you don't have a shield, it reduces it by 0.5% per block skill. And so at 100 skill, it caps at 50. With a shield, it caps at 75% damage reduction. So you can have, if you have 400 base health at the armor cap and 75 block skill, and you block with a shield, you have 10,000, over 10,000 effective health. The enemies will literally never kill you. Even on mastery difficulty, enemies they will not deal 2,000. Clamfears deal 36. The top enemies, top ogres at very high levels might be doing up to 50. So if you're blocking, you simply won't die, even on master difficulty. And that's because with 85 armor and the max block, you're only taking 3.75% of the damage an enemy is dealing. It's pretty ridiculous. You can add in some reflect damage, which we'll talk about in a minute, and you're very, very tanky. Not to mention, against spells, as a Breton Lord, you start with 65% magic resist. You're taking less than half damage. The last thing I want to mention is the Breton Greater Power. So even at that beginning, when I started with 30 heavy armor, 30 block, and that, 40? So even when I was starting at this, a Breton can once a day add 50% shield. And that would bring me to my armor cap. Because if I'm at 36.8 plus 50 is more than 85. And so if we get to our armor cap here, at 85, look at this master difficulty. At 85, it goes up to 133 effective health. You won't die to be perfectly frank. If you're using that greater power, 50% shield for 1 minute, you can fight pretty well, even on master difficulty for that full minute, because you have the Lord sign, because you're wearing heavy armor, because your heavy armor skill is super low. That will allow you to level your heavy armor skill much better than if you didn't have that. Because normally in vanilla Oblivion, it's actually really difficult to level heavy armor on max difficulty because enemies deal ×6 damage instead of ×5, and you just die too quickly. If you die, you can't you can't level your heavy armor, and the Lord sign's not there. So that 50%, without that 15%, even with that 50% bonus, you're only at 70% armor. So notice that effective health is 67. The difference going from 70 to 85 is doubling it. So that Lord sign, when you're at this low level of armor early game, that Lord sign is actually doubling your effective health because you're going from 70 to the armor cap. So that Lord sign actually makes a very big difference, in particular with the Breton's racial power, because it gets you just to that armor cap. When those last 15 points of armor are the points that you're getting, that's when it's crazy valuable. It's actually really huge for your health. And then you're able to, like I said, tank things, which will allow you to raise your skills much better. Okay, back to the Battlemage build. Early game spells, so you can go to Silenus in Skingrad. He sells some good 25 damage touch spells, 20 damage target spells, and he sells the weakness to element spells. Great place to buy those. You're going to want to buy 100% weakness. I'll talk about weakness stacking in a minute. And some mid-game spells. So there's Arlenway in the Market District Mystic Emporium. It's in the Market District in the Imperial City. She sells weakness to magic. You need at least 50 destruction to cast it. You should be getting 50 destruction. Even without picking magic specializations, Bretons and High Elves both have a small bonus to destruction to start. You picked it as a major skill. You're going to be spamming high expensive spells because, well, that's all you're going to be doing to kill your enemies on master difficulty. That should go up very quickly. 50 will come quick. You're going to make custom spells when you get in the Mages Guild or you're using the Tower that do 100% weakness to shock and 100% weakness to magic. Now, it doesn't actually matter which element you choose, and late game you can combine all of the elements. In this case, I'm going to say shock because very few enemies resist shock, especially in that early to mid game. It's really Storm Atronachs are the only one. A lot of the Daedra have a little 20% weakness to shock. The Undead resist frost, Flame Atronachs, and a lot of others resist fire. So shock is kind of that nice one that pretty much hurts everybody. With this effect, I want to show you some weakness stacking that we can do. If you cast 100% weakness to magic and 100% weakness to shock on an enemy, your first cast will give them 100% weakness to both of those things. This means their damage taken from all magic will be doubled, and their damage taken from all shock damage will be doubled. So magic doubled and shock damage is doubled. Your final damage then will be quadrupled because it multiplies those two multipliers together. If you cast that same identical spell on the same enemy again and it hits, it will refresh the duration. So let's say for 7 seconds, it will refresh that 7 seconds back. So you have 7 more seconds. And because they had 100% weakness to magic, your new spell will have 200% weakness to magic and 200% weakness to shock, meaning they have 3 times damage multipliers. And because you're multiplying those together, it's going to be ×9. You'll notice these are perfect squares. So if you just cast over and over and over and over and over again on the same enemy, I mean, at 8 casts, we're talking about 81 times damage. Even on master difficulty, if you can do a touch damage here, I think if we say 25, that's still going to deal 400 damage on master difficulty. Now, obviously, you're not going to want to cast 8 build-up spells first. That's kind of ridiculous. But just to show you that it is possible to nuke really powerful enemies even on master difficulty with that. Now, there's one better way to do it. It's just a little more tedious, and it's a lot easier for the weakness effect to fall off. You can alternate between 2 identical but separate spells. So you could hotkey one 100% weakness to magic and 100% weakness to shock as hotkey 1. I'll make this hotkey 1, and we can pretend that this one is hotkey 2. So I'm going back and forth between hotkey 1 and 2. So I cast hotkey 1, does that same thing, gets me that 4 times damage multiplier. Then I hit 2, and I cast my next one. My first one will still be on there. It won't overwrite it, and it won't refresh the duration. So if you're doing this, you'll want the duration to be longer, probably 10 seconds, because you want to cast your first spell again before it falls off in duration. Because, well, first, if you've cast your first spell and then your second, because you have 2 different spells up, your multiplier is going to be times 4 because you have 100% weakness and 200% weakness, and these add together. 300% weakness is a times 4 multiplier. Because you have times 4 multiplier for magic damage and shock damage, it is times 16 damage. So you've only cast 2 weakness spells, and it's already times 16 damage. If you're able to do a shock spell for 40 damage, which is like 20 for 2 seconds, that's not that much. That'll deal 128 damage on master difficulty, which is pretty massive. What gets really crazy is if the first spell doesn't fall off and you refresh it. Because you have a times 4 multiplier, it's going to apply 400% weakness to magic, leading you to have a times 7 damage multiplier of each type, which is a 49 times multiplier. So this is kind of the magic spot because that's a huge jump. You'll probably notice 128 damage might not kill a lot of enemies. You know, a Storm Atronach has 280. Zivili have 12 times your level. At least they did in vanilla Oblivion. They could have changed it. Goblin Warlords have 30 times your level. They probably changed that, but that's 900 at level 30. What can happen is, I think it's very common to want to do 3 casts. You do hotkey 1, hotkey 2, hotkey 1 again. You'll have a 49 times damage multiplier. You can pretty much round that for quick math to times 50. If you even do your base flare spell, which is 6 damage, that's going to do 300 damage to an enemy, almost 300 damage, annihilating most enemies. And you can cast a lot more damage, especially if you're combining shock, fire, and frost. Just know that if you do that, you have to combine those weaknesses as well. If you watch my mage showcase, I actually just do this one because it's just less work and you don't need to alternate. But if you're ever playing max difficulty and you want to annihilate your enemies, this is how people do that if you watch them. The only other ways really are poisons and conjuration, but this is how you beat master difficulty. Okay, so end game. Well, that's when you're going to combine shock, fire, and frost damage and weakness, because with that, you can get higher magnitudes because of the way the spell cost is calculated. Spell cost is calculated with, it's exponential for magnitude. So if you want to do 100 damage fire, that costs a lot more than doing, in fact, I'll show you. If I want to do 100 damage fire for 1 second, that costs 54 magicka with 100 skill. 54, if you see that right there. But if I want to combine that, let's say I want to do 40 of all 3 types. That's 120 damage, right? Well, that costs 51 total because this number right here in blue combines all 3 of these costs. So when it was just 100 fire, that's 54. But when it's 40 of each kind, it's 51. So that's 20 more damage, but a little bit less magicka. So keeping that magnitude lower. In fact, if I do 30 of each of these for 2 seconds, well, that's still a lot more. Maybe 25 for 2 seconds. That's pretty close in magicka to 100 for 1 second, but this is 150 damage. So it's 50% more damage for about the same magicka cost as just 100. So you don't want to do 100 for 1 second of just fire. You want to spread it out between different types, and you want to spread it out between, and you want to extend the duration a little bit. Also know that if you don't get 100 destruction skill, this simply doesn't work. If I have 50 destruction skill, just this 25 damage for 2 seconds costs 76. It's not very viable, to be perfectly frank. If you want to do 40 damage for 2 seconds, it's 140. Like late game, you might have 300 to 600 magicka, depending on your enchants, and that's just too much for just 1 damage spell to hurt 1 enemy. And also, so then there's weakness spells. Even if we bump these up to 10 seconds, so this is weakness to magic, 10 seconds on target costs 27. For shock, 10 seconds on target costs 10. Combine that, and that's only 37. If you want to add, or it's 38 right there, it says. So double weakness means I'm doing magic and shock. That's the cost for touch and on target. Triple if I wanted to add fire. Quad means I'm doing fire, frost, shock, and magic weakness all combined. So that costs 60 magicka to do all 4 of those effects for 10 seconds. I can cast that if I'm alternating like I was talking about, or even if I'm not alternating. If I cast the same spell once, twice, and 3 times, remember those multipliers get me to crazy damage. So if I was doing this spell here for 71, after I cast this weakness spell for 59 3 times, I could be doing over 2,800 damage. So a late game, it's this weakness stacking combined with a Fire Frost Shock spell. That's what really blows people up. You can also combine everything with short Fortify Magicka and Willpower buffs, and you can have custom Fortify Magicka and Willpower with high duration spells that you cast, which will allow you to just really nuke everything. Early game enchant, if you watch my last video, I showed you how to get Fortify Destruction with the Tower Stone or the Jones Stone. It doesn't matter how you do it. You're going to want Fortify Destruction. If you're playing Master difficulty, you're also going to want to do shield. I would still get 100 Fortify Destruction just to make sure you can kill things, and it'll get your destruction up really fast. But shield's going to make a big difference. Obviously, then later as you get to mid-game, sigil stones are going to be huge. The best sigil stone at level 17 is 25% elemental shield, so that's 25% shield. Sigil Stone for Magic Resist is 20%. That's huge too. The best Sigil Stone for Fortify Magicka is plus 50. That's kind of your end game best enchant that you want. And you want to make sure your destruction is pretty much sitting at 100 because your Blunt's going to be used maybe to stagger them, but also to just get that shield up. So it's not really used to kill them. There are some enemies like Zivalai, which it'll be nice to help damage them because they have spell absorption and stuff and a lot of resistances. End game items, honestly, they're pretty much the same as the regular build. If you watch that one, I would just make sure if you're doing Master difficulty, you're using a one-hander because you want the armor from your shield. You can get the enchant with your shield with a two-hander as well, and it won't. The shield doesn't affect your spell effectiveness, but in this particular build, I would use a one-hander so the shield gives you its armor, and you're not really relying on that physical damage. You don't really need the two-hander. I would you could put a weakness enchant on the weapon if you want. That would allow you to, because remember that power attack is going to give you that shield. Make sure you can hit him with a good weakness enchant from your weapon, cast another weakness enchant, and then finish him off with some damage. That can do some crazy damage pretty quick and save you some magicka there. Just know that then you'll have to soul trap. You could add a quick soul trap to the weapon itself, or you could just cast soul trap yourself. Mundane Ring is huge. I talked about that in my other video, my top 5 builds, how to get it. Amulet of Axes, Ring of the Iron Fist, and I don't know how to say that, this Shield of Korhal. I'm not going to talk about how to get these, but all 3 of them combined will give you over 100% reflect damage. And reflect damage over 100% means you don't take physical damage from enemies. It actually just reflects it. And so if you wear all 3 of these, the game kind of ends. And so I don't ever do that because it's not fun. But if you're playing on Master difficulty, I think it's pretty reasonable to wear 1 or 2 of these. Because just like we were talking about our effective health, yes, blocking and having max armor will make you take this much damage, only 3.75%, but you can cut that into 1/3 or 2/3 by wearing 1 or 2 of those reflect damage things. So you could make this effective health, for example, 16,000 or what is that, 20,000. You can get a lot of effective health with those. Obviously, wearing all 3 would give you infinite effective health because enemies would not hurt you. If you have the Mundane Ring with this build and all 3 of those, magic can't hurt you and physical damage can't hurt you. So I think only lava could kill you. I don't know how else you would die. Maybe fall damage, which then you would just combine that with weakness stacking. So it really depends how far you're willing to push it is the limits of this build. And any limitations that you have are really made up with alchemy. You can restore your magicka, you can fortify your magicka. Any spell effect you can just do with potions. So I would really make sure you're pumping out alchemy as well because that can make a huge difference. All right, that's all I got. Thanks for watching.